Hi, everyone. It's Kate Taylor from The Nocturnal. So I'm here with the cast and director of Limbo, and it's a film about refugees living in Scotland hoping to get asylum status. It centers one in particular, Omar from Syria, who is a musician, and he brought his grandfather's ode with him, and he is hoping to stay with the rest of his friends in Scotland.
Hi, my name is El-Masry and I play Omar in Limbo.
So, what is Omar like, and how did you prepare to play him?
Omar is a quiet, reflective, inward character who doesn't wear his heart on his sleeve so much, but kind of encompasses a strong, silent type. um, he he's someone who when we see him is at a loss, and he feels he's still searching for his identity, which is back home with his family. Um, and yeah, we kind of follow his journey into trying to regain, regain his image and his own personality back.
Mhm. And so this movie had so many moments that were like sentimental and emotional as well as comedic. So was everything scripted, or were there moments where you improved and got to input your own take on the script?
Well, during the rehearsal process, we had a lot of time to play and stuff. But for the most part, the script was a an amazing. It wasn't just a reference point. We pretty much went along with the script. Any little added nuances were things that little words here and there. But for the most part, yeah, we kind of went with the script. And that was what was incredible. But in terms of serving the character and some of the Middle Eastern jokes and inward jokes, yeah, we had I had a little bit of input there in that regard.
Mhm. And so, what was it like bonding with the rest of the cast? We saw great moments between the characters on screen, but what happened behind the screen? Did everyone hang out? Were there jokes off screen, things like that?
Yeah. Well, whenever possible. For the most part, I was working pretty much every day. But yeah, when we were hanging out, between setups and stuff, yeah, we got along so well. And even when we rapped, we all live in London, so we got to hang out, go for dinners and chill. And yeah, I love those boys, and they do feel like family. We didn't have any reception on that island. It was very difficult to kind of call home, so we only had each other to kind of connect with and feel that sense of family. Yeah, it was just so easy to work with all of them, with Vikash, Ola, and Quabs.
And so this film has been receiving a lot of buzz, awards wise. What is it like having the industry be so receptive?
Yeah, I mean, it's what's crazy is we've taken it to different countries, all with their own cultures and way of life. And you know it's the message has transcended all of them, and they've all managed to kind of relate to it in some way. And especially now, over the past couple of years, COVID has allowed a lot of us to think inwardly and to reflect and to think about where we prioritize our energies and yeah, well, it's allowed me to be a lot more grateful. What's interesting is also I was most nervous about taking it to Cairo Film Festival because I knew that they would cotton on to anything that didn't feel remotely Middle Eastern in the dialogue or in the culture itself. When Omar was talking to his mother, but yeah, we had a standing ovation there, and I called Ben on FaceTime for him to see the audience, and they all thought he was Middle Eastern. That was a beautiful thing as well. They were like, "What? Someone Scottish wrote and directed this film? It's crazy." but yeah, he managed to encapsulate the world perfectly.
Yeah, and so what from playing this role, what did you learn about yourself as an actor that you're going to take into different roles, and how did this role, challenge you in ways that others in the past haven't?
Well, on a personal level, yeah, it's allowed me to think, definitely to have more patience, to kind of count my blessings in that sense. I've been doing this for 12 years, and I've been met with a lot of challenges. Partly because of how the industry was shaped when I first started out. It was a lot harder, to get in a room for certain roles, because of my background, being British Egyptian. But I think the doors are slightly opening up, and I think, when you're seeing people like myself and the other boys in leading roles, it's where, and on top of that, Focus Features picking up a film like this, is a testament to where people want to be on the right side of on what narrative they want to be on. And and then I just feel lucky that I have that backing, from a huge company like Focus and BFI and Film 4, and so yeah, I hope that there'll be more production companies that are brave to do that, to do the same thing, and follow that. I hope to still, I want to carry on what I'm doing. I want to tell stories that mean something. I want to play the everyday man, and something that makes people feel some type of way.
Hi, Cage. My name is Vikash Bhai, and I play Farhad in Limbo.
Great. And if you could tell me a little bit more about your character.
Farhad is an Afghan man who we meet in the film whilst he's waiting for the results of his asylum claim. And I guess as a person, he's what is he? He's eternally optimistic. He's not without his own traumas, but he's kind of got that unrelenting faith in things turning out for the best.
Great. And so how has this role been different from what you've done in the past? You were in Hannah and The Stranger and all these things. What is unique about this role?
Oh, so many things, Cage. I think one of the things is that for a start, I haven't done a role before that's kind of had this level of responsibility, both in terms of the storytelling aspect, but also supporting our lead in quite a close storytelling format. And also Farhad's just this kind of he's a chap that's unapologetically himself, and I saw there's a lot of courage in who he is, and I've not been able to tell a story about a person like that before, let alone someone who's had to leave their home to find some kind of refuge somewhere else.
And you've seen the film, correct?
I have, yes.
So what were your first impressions of watching it on the big screen, and not like, seeing it on the script, but actually seeing how it came together and, your part in it?
I was absolutely blown away, because you have, all of the ideas of what you think the scene's going to play, like when you read a book, and your imagination tells you a story of one sort, but also then being able to see all of those different aspects of filmmaking coming together, the cinematography, the set design, the costumes, the bits that I wasn't there for, the scenes that I'm not in, and then also the scenes that I'm in, all of that put together. The sound design, which is amazing, and the grading, and just watching all of that come together as a film, and then being able to see that story once again, after I think it had been maybe 2 years since I visited it. So unlike in some occasions where you might see the product after about 3 or 4 months, this had enough time to have completely forgotten what we'd created to experience it as just a consumer again.
Yeah. And so what was your favorite scene to shoot? You know, whether it was in the beginning while you were shooting it or, you know, after seeing it, like, is there something that you really admire, you know, a moment in the movie?
There's so many. There's so many. The One of my favorite scenes to shoot would be is the scene between Omar and Farhad when Farhad confronts Omar about he asks him about whether he thinks that Farhad has a right to be here as well, and that I think that was a real turning point in the story for Farhad and for the audience to get to know a little bit more of an insight into his life. But then also the scenes with the other two actors, Qabanansa and Ol Arabi, you know, we had a lot of fun doing those. The scene with where the two young men discuss whether Ross and Rachel were on a break. You know, I mean, for myself and Amir, we're kind of just watching this play out, and on the day Ben kind of let them continue that scene, so everything that was on the page, but then they did some more improv after that, and it was just hilarious. Yeah, that's and to finish off, sorry, I don't know how much time you got, but my favorite scene to watch in the film was where Omar's at the phone box with his mum and they sing the song about the little bird. That just broke my heart.
So how did you get involved in Limbo, and why? What made you, you know, choose this role and agree to do this?
So Limbo came to me as most jobs do. I got sent the sides for the audition. I did the tape and I sent them off. And when I read the script, you know, just from turning page one, I thought this was hilarious. The first scene where we meet Helga and Boris, I just on the page alone, let alone these fantastic actors doing what we see on the screen, had me hooked, and I thought, yes, I'm in, you know. And then just page after page after page, it was just such a beautiful story about this young man, about this musician who's kind of burdened with his grandfather's oud and his kind of his loss of identity and him finding his way again, you know. And I thought to myself, gosh, this is a really special piece of screenplay, and I've got to do whatever I can to get involved. You know, even if I can just hold the boom, I'll do it. But yeah, no, thankfully I got called back many times on several occasions for the auditions and eventually landed the part.
Great. And I think I have time for one last question. So what is something, you know, quick that audiences can take away from this film?
What is something, sorry, I missed that.
Something audiences will take away from this film?
I think so many things. I think that there's so many things that we can relate to as human beings in this story. I hope at least that we can see whether it's about friendship or whether it's about finding belonging or identity or some level of existentialism. You know, there's aspects of human life that we all experience. It doesn't have to be that you have to go through the experiences that these people do, but what you do see is that whatever these people have gone through, they're not a statistic. They're human beings, and these are human stories. I guess that's what I'd hope people go away with.
Okay, my name is Ben Sharrick. I'm the writer and director of Limbo.
So I'd love for you to tell me more about the inspiration for the storyline.
The inspiration for the storyline, it kind of, there's sort of two parts of it. One is kind of my sort of connection to the subject matter and kind of my desire to tell this story, which really goes back kind of over 10 years to the point that I was living in Syria just the year before the civil war started. And then kind of after that, in the years that followed, I ended up working with an NGO in the Sahrawi refugee camps in southern Algeria. and working specifically on a project there that was about identity and about how the label of being a refugee affects identity. And then flash forward again, when the refugee crisis became very prevalent in the media, I was really struck by the representations of refugees and how we were sort of experiencing this process of dehumanization, where on the one side we had the demonizing of refugees, and on the other we had the pitying of refugees, and both of these things are dehumanizing. We were looking at the refugee crisis and refugees as just numbers and statistics. So I really wanted to kind of write a film about the sort of humanizes the refugee experiences and kind of takes a different, sort of distills this big topic down into the human level, and also kind of takes a different approach by using humor.
Yeah, and speaking of humor, so this film was comedic, it was dramatic, it was sentimental. What was it like, creating that balance? Was it a challenge for you?
It was a challenge. It was a huge challenge, and I think that was, probably the biggest challenge that kind of I faced, throughout the journey of making this film, and that kind of started with the screenplay, and really spending a lot of time on that, and also which involved a huge amount of research as well, but speaking to people that had been through the asylum system and kind of as well saying, how would you, can I use comedy here? And how would you feel about a film that deals with this and uses comedy in this way? And that kind of came back with a resounding yes, like, please kind of use humor with this topic. And a lot of people were tired of these kind of very kind of dramatic, sensationalized accounts of the refugee journey and things like this. And then it was just something that we worked really hard on during the production, working with the actors in the rehearsal process, and then in the edit as well, spending a lot of time really carefully balancing the tone so we could kind of move between humor and drama, and kind of hold that tightrope.
So what were your goals in terms of cinematography and artistic direction? There were some really great scenes, Omar in the phone booth, him seeing the jersey in the snow. So like, how did you go about doing that?
I think that a lot of the things in terms of the use, using the cinematography, using the production design, a lot of these things were kind of, on one hand, they were tools that again kind of work to balance the tone of the film. So it was often about creating an undertone of humor and a playfulness, but then playing scenes very straight. So that would be through the composition or through the use of color. At moments there would be maybe a hat that was too colorful, and it would kind of push the scene towards being too playful or too funny. So we kind of take that down in order to balance it. But then also the cinematography and all of the other elements, the sort of the cinematic form, is really about kind of building that around Omar's emotional journey and Omar's experience. So trying to use these tools to reflect what Omar is going through, but also to kind of connect the audience to Omar. So when Omar, so also the state of limbo, for example, the film's called Limbo, these characters are in limbo, but we also want the audience to feel this limbo. So they're experiencing this through, they're kind of going through this, with Omar and with the other characters. So that's why, we have the static frames, and that's why the rhythm creates this kind of feeling of limbo as well. So a lot went into sort of trying to get the audience to share the experience of these characters on screen, and to get them to kind of invest in the characters and connect with them.
And then speaking of the characters, if you could tell me a little bit more about, how you built the characters, what was the inspiration, between, creating their personalities and things like that, them being so entertained by Ross and Rachel, and like, someone being, having a football aspiration, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that so many of it's interesting because there were so many of these things that are, based on realities, and sort of, real refugee stories. So the Omar's story about him, him being a musician and taking the oud across with him from Syria, and or the narrative of Wasif wanting to play for Chelsea, and Farhad not having a coat and having to share the coat. That's actually based on a real story as well. So there's lots of that that's based on reality, but then it's also, the thing is that this film is about, it's not about them being refugees, it's about them being human beings, and it's about the being human. So it's not necessarily about them, specific to them being refugees. It's about their interests being like anyone's interests might be. Friends is a global thing. People all over the world. I've spoken to people in Syria about Friends. I've spoken to people in China about Friends, and the same goes for, Freddie Mercury or Chelsea Football Club or whatever it is. So it's really kind of building these characters that are universally relatable, because that's how they are.
And then, so what was the casting process like?
We went through a really thorough casting process and auditioned people from all over the world, and we had initially, actually, to find Amir, who plays Omar. We did this sort of big global search, and then I actually ended up finding an image of him online, and kind of immediately knew that he was Omar. I just had him in my head that that's Omar, and I went to bed that night and dreamt of him in the role. And then we brought him in for the casting process, and he was really, he was brilliant from really early on, and just understood the character at such a deep level from the very beginning. So he was one of the first people that we brought on board.